This is the JWN Podcast. On today's episode, we speak with Mandy Baughman.
You know, for the first time, I had looked in the mirror and said, like, you are beautiful and you are enough.
When I decided to finally turn the key on this podcast, I made a list of people that I wanted to talk to, and I wanted to focus on creative people first. And then I thought about it, and I was like, well, what about athletes, entrepreneurs, people who've survived stuff? They all share a very similar self-starter mentality. There's a DIY work ethic that kind of runs through, even in people who play team sports. I mean, if you've watched that Michael Jordan, The Last Dance, I don't know if you've seen it.
Yeah.
You know, he's team sport, but you could see he's a self-starter. He is definitely the driving force behind the success of that team. But your name came to mind, and then I was like, oh, you know what? Mandy was my first yoga teacher, and there was, it was such a situation where it could have gone either way. Like if I had the wrong yoga teacher for me at that time, I probably would have just stopped. I would have been like, well, I tried it. It wasn't for me. But, you know, then you learned, or I learned, there's yoga is like a language all of its own. And there's just people, you know, who can speak it better to you than others. But I thought about, you know, for this podcast that I'd like you to be my first guest because I think that you have you have an ability to connect with people on a very, very real level. So that's why
Thank
you're
you.
number one.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of other reasons why people would consider you number one, but let's get to the bottom of it.
Yeah.
So just let's start with where you grew up.
Yeah. I grew up in North Canton, Ohio. So it's a nice suburb of Northeast Ohio. It's an all-white suburb. There wasn't a lot to do growing up there. And, you know, I grew up, I would say, like, you know, in a middle-class family. I didn't always have everything I wanted, but I didn't not have the things that I wanted. And it was like impounded into my brain that, like, you have to work hard to have nice things. And it was this thing that was impounded in my brain since I was a little kid. And it wasn't until I recently went to therapy that I kind of was working all through that. And my therapist was like, well, you know, there's a lot of people who don't work hard that have nice things, and it's okay to want nice things. And it was this whole unraveling of what I'd been taught growing up was, you know, kind of the opposite. It's kind of what my therapist was telling me. So I grew up North Canton, and my parents got divorced when I was 4. So I was really young. I don't really have any memory of growing up with my dad, like, in the house. Like, I have no idea what it's like to sit down with both my parents as a child and have dinner together. And my mom quickly remarried after they got divorced, I think when I was 6. So just a couple years after they got divorced. And it was really hard because I didn't like my stepdad.
Oh no.
Yeah. I honestly, like, he's just kind of a piece of shit. And to put it lightly, he just wasn't a good person. And it just wasn't great. So I lived with my mom and my stepdad growing up. And then in high school, I decided that I was going to leave my mom and my stepdad's place. And I feel so terrible for having to put, like, my mom on the spot. But I told her, I said, I can't live here with him anymore. And I will not move back in or live with you until you divorce him. And I left and moved in with my dad. And my dad remarried when I was in high school to my stepmom, Sharon, who is just this lovely, full of abundance type of person. And she was exactly like what I needed. I was going through a really hard time then. In high school and, you know, my parents being divorced and my stepdad just being a piece of crap.
So
Yeah.
which family was the hard work gets you nice things ethic coming from?
So that was my dad. That was my dad. And it just, I mean, he's a hard worker. He always has been. And, uh, you know, when I start to think about how he raised me and my brother, I look at how he was raised. So through like my grandmother's eyes. And, you know, she grew up during the Great Depression and they didn't have a lot, you know, and I am sure that she instilled that in him. In order to have what you want, you have to work hard.
And
Um,
was there a you need to hold on to what you have type of mentality? Did he have that thing going on where it's like um not like super valuable possessions, but like holding on to everything because you never know when you're going to need it? Was that something that came from that, or did he get saved from that kind of mentality?
so he got saved from that, but my mom didn't. So she was like the opposite of that. And she was at like, let's hold on to everything. And she was really like, can't throw anything away to save her life, which is a result in me having that. Cause it was kind of a balance to live with my dad and see like, he wasn't really that type of person. And she was like the complete opposite, that I'm the type of person of like, throw the shit out. Like,
Yeah.
we don't need it. And I feel really thankful for that. Because there's just, yeah, I just feel
It's a
thankful
tough
for it.
thing. It's a tough thing. I know where that comes from, and it's very,
Mm-hmm.
you know, I grew up with grandparents from who grew up in the Great Depression, and it's a hard thing. And if they instill that on you, it's very very stressful for everyone else around you. So I'm happy for you that like you don't have that, and that yeah, because
Yeah.
whew, it's a
But
hard
I think
one.
my husband does. I think Adam does a little bit. And like he'll like save boxes that stuff is like shipped in just in case we have to send it back. And I'm like, well, go get another box. Like
My,
we don't need this.
You just described the eaves of my bedroom right now. Oh, look, this thing I bought 20 years ago. I don't think I'm going to return it. I think it's safe to throw away the box now.
Yeah, yeah. So it's I think that gets under his skin a little bit because, you know, especially with COVID and all this stuff, and we're doing like, you know, cleaning the house, and we put our house on the market, and I'm constantly like, do you really need all this? Like, can we get rid of this? Let's throw this away. And sometimes I almost feel guilty for uh even having to say that because it might
Yeah.
hold sentimental value to him that I just don't
Yeah.
understand.
It's a hard thing, but
Yeah.
so when you were in high school, when you what would you where would you put yourself on the Principal Vernon from the Breakfast Club scale? Like, were you the brain, athlete, basket case, princess, or criminal? Now, I have an idea what you might say, but I'm not going to steer you. Brain,
Uh,
athlete, basket case, princess, or criminal?
Um, I think I was a combination of
That's what I thought you would say.
of an athlete. I played soccer in high school. I played basketball for a while. I would say criminal, but I've never gotten arrested, but I've participated in a lot of criminal activity in high school.
You were in the car a
Uh,
lot.
I was in the car a lot. I was drinking a lot. I smoked a lot of pot, and I think the beautiful thing about my parents is that they were really great at communicating with us to an extent of like, we know what you're doing, and if you cannot drive, do not get behind the car. Please call us. We'll pick you up. No questions asked. You're not in trouble, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But so I mean, you know, at a point I kind of felt like, oh, that's a pass to get drunk, and like feeling thankful to have parents that I didn't have to like hide from, you know, that part of me. And I snuck out a ton just to like, I was boy crazy. So I would sneak out and like go meet boys and like make out under the stars and go back home.
Oh yeah, the sneaking out thing. I don't think I just don't think my kids have any idea what that's about. I mean, I think there's a generation of kids right now that just don't do that. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm naive. Maybe they have. Maybe they're doing it, and I just don't know. But honestly, the technology is there. That they're not doing that.
Yeah.
There would be a camera on your doorbell that would show that they left.
Yeah.
But
And a part of me almost feels bad for those kids to not have that experience and the thrill of like creeping through the back door to slowly open or going through the window to like go hang out with your friends. And,
did you ever get caught?
yes, I will never I was at my friend Amanda's house and, we snuck out. I went over to Chad Coyle's and made out with him all night in his room. And it was like 3 a.m. and somehow her parents had like come downstairs to find that we weren't there. And like, I don't even think we had cell phones yet. So I don't know how we figured this out. Like if one of the parents figured out where we were and called this boy's house and was like driving around looking for us. And we're just like, oh, fuck, we're in so much trouble. And we get back to their house and I don't remember the repercussions. I'm pretty sure they did not tell my parents that we were out running around North Canton and kissing boys all night. But I don't know if my parents ever caught me. To come to think about it, if they did, I lived with my mom. She was super lax, so I can't imagine she did much if she did catch me.
Man, that's
Yeah.
It's definitely my teenage years took a major shift because of getting caught. Because mine involved the police.
Oh, okay,
and breaking an entry, not in a negative trying to steal something. In a friend's relative was on vacation and he had the keys, and we all went into this house in the middle of the night to drink their liquor, and the police showed up, and I was
sounds like a good time.
Yeah, it turned into a whole spiritual thing for me because I was sent to a second cousin's house for a week who's a born again Christian.
Interesting.
And
so how did that, like, what came of that?
a knowledge of Christian heavy metal.
Okay.
He tried his hardest to save me, and I went through the whole thing. I spent a good summer, like really questioning everything. And like, it took a lot for me to, I don't want to say get over it, because I don't think that's a fair thing to say, but it took a long time for me to kind of shake this weird thing. Growing up in a house, I was raised in Catholic school, going to Catholic school, so there's a certain amount of guilt that you're handed to at birth in a Catholic home, and then when you go, this was like that under a microscope, and it was just, everything you did, you felt like you were being judged. It was a difficult thing. But, that kind of is an easy segue into like the yoga mindset. When I first went to that class, I was very skeptical. I was like, here we go. Is this going to be like a weird religion thing? Is this going to be culty? Is this going to, like, what is, I don't know what this is. I have no idea what to expect. And I took your class, and I remember at the end, and it was a beginner's class. It was definitely a lot of hand holding going on. And you said, at the end of the class, everyone says namaste. And I didn't say it because I was like, the hell is this shit? And so, and then I got home and thought about it. And I remember emailing you and saying like, hey, I felt really like weird about saying namaste, and I didn't say it. And then I felt awful about saying it because I was just like, I didn't want to feel like I was being disrespectful to the whole thing. And you were just like, don't sweat it. You had this very like, you kind of made it clear that this thing called yoga was whatever you make of it. It doesn't have to have this weird set of rules. There are, but there aren't. There's interpretations. There's there's fluidity. So I want to know from you what inspired you to get into yoga. Like, how did you go from boy crazy, out drinking all night, switching families, kind of just going like, what got you into yoga? What was your introduction into yoga?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, firstly, I just want to say thank you. And that really has been my goal, is for people to feel like there are no set rules to this thing called yoga. And I feel like as I've gotten more into teaching and more into learning, I'm trying to lean into that even more so. Because I think people like to have a set of rules. I think people like to know they're doing something right or wrong. And with yoga, it's our anatomies. I've said this 1,000 times, I feel like, but our anatomies and our bone structures are all different. So we aren't all going to be able to do the same things. And if we as teachers are consistently telling people you have to put your knees in line with your ankles in high lunge or it's wrong, people are going to show up and either consistently think they're wrong because they can't, or they're going to work so hard to try and do it that they're going to cause themselves injury. And it's like, when we can give the students permission to just show up, and as teachers truly forget about the aesthetics of what it looks like, I mean, that to me is so empowering. I love as a student to be able to feel that. So, thank you.
Oh,
For telling me that, because I'm glad I'm glad it's resonating,
well, I
even
think
after all this time.
yeah, well, because it's a connection. It was one of those instant connections, like, okay. And I mean, that was years ago. And so now
Yeah.
I've gotten to know you over the years, in various aspects of life, and creativity. But so, all right, so the
So
inspiration for you, like, what got you into
yes.
it?
Yeah. So it's a little bit of a long-winded answer. So just prep yourself.
Hold on,
I
hold on. Let me get comfortable. Okay.
Yeah, get comfortable, get your coffee or your water. So after college, I moved up to Cleveland, Ohio, and that city holds such a special place in my heart. And I think it's because it's where I found yoga. Um, but I had moved up there and was dating someone, and it was the first apartment that I had by myself. And I moved there because he was there, and I didn't really know anybody. And the short of that story was we ended up breaking up. And shortly after I'd moved to Cleveland, and I was like, shit, like, I don't know anybody here. He was the only reason I was here. And I found myself looking at it now, probably in some sort of depression and just feeling really down. And I remember feeling like I was just kind of floating along in life. I always describe it as like, I was like floating down the street. I'm just like a head, just like floating, not serving any purpose, not having any idea where I was going. And I don't really believe in organized religion. I too grew up Catholic, and my dad is a very hardcore Catholic, and it's just not my jam. So I knew that about myself, but I knew I wanted to believe in something bigger than me, but I didn't know what it was. So I thought for a long time about going to a Buddhist temple, but I was really scared because I didn't want to do it by myself because I didn't know what to expect. And even though I'd done research. And so I went to a yoga class with a friend that I had met in Cleveland a couple times as just kind of like a recreational, like, let's go to yoga. And it was fine. It didn't really stick. It was really hard because I was in my head the whole time. And I was like, oh, I did gymnastics as a kid. I'm an athlete. I can do all this stuff. And it's very ego driven. And, I went, and then it just, I didn't stick. And so I was at the gym one day, and this random person next to me was just like, hey, have you been to Inner Bliss Yoga Studio? And I said, no. And he goes, oh, you should try it. It's like right around the corner. It's really great. And I said, okay. And I didn't really think much of it, and realized that it was like 2 miles down the street from my apartment. So I went, and Jennifer Uhas was my teacher there. And I was in the back corner with this like raggedy old nasty mat with like sweatpants on. I think it was a hot class. I didn't know it was a hot class. And it was so hard. It was like, I think it might have been a power class. It definitely was not beginners. I did not start my yoga journey taking a beginner class.
Oh my goodness. I can't even imagine, because it took me like a year before I would even like try to do a regular all levels class. I was like, I'm just
Yeah,
going to hang out in this
yeah.
beginners. I'm going to go on the bunny slopes for a long
Yeah,
time.
no, I was just like balls to the wall. Let's do this. And I don't remember what she said, but I just remember how I felt when I left. And I had felt seen. I had felt somehow taken care of. I had felt a part of something bigger. And her message, like whatever she shared, had lingered. And I remember going to my friend Stephanie and I said, this whatever this teacher said in class, like I'm still really thinking about it. It was like a few days later, I was like, is that normal? And so I went back and I started going back and back. And Jen was my first teacher. She's still my teacher. And it gave me this sense of belonging. And, you know, for the first time, that was almost 10 years ago, maybe 9 years ago that I started yoga. And, you know, for the first time I had looked in the mirror and said, like, you are beautiful and you are enough. And, you know, I appreciated and was learning self-love. And that's something that I still struggle with, but, you know, I suffered a couple eating disorders in college and high school, and I had a lot of self-doubt, and I didn't like myself. I didn't like who I was. And this practice gave me something more than I had ever anticipated. And yeah.
What do you think that person who didn't like themselves, if they were to see you today, what do you think they would think? Like, what do you think they would say to you?
Oh man. You know, I would hope she would say, like, I am so proud of you. I'm so proud of the hard work, and I'm proud of your vulnerability, is what I hope she would really say to me. Because, you know, truth be told, when I was in college and in high school and had these moments of, you know, not eating, I still didn't feel seen. You know, I lived with my mom at the time, and my soccer coach had to go to her and say, like, this is what's happening with your daughter. And that felt really shitty. And it made me continue to feel like I wasn't important. And my dad handled it the complete opposite, was like really stern, and was like that. I feel like we see in like bad TV movies of like, sit down and you're going to eat this steak. and it was like trying to like shove, you know, food down my mouth. And it's just, I never had any in between. And I somehow got through it.
There's this weird, I think, so I went through a long period of adulthood being overweight. And there's this feeling that you get once you realize, oh my gosh, I've let myself go, that you think like, well, if I were to be, you know, of a normal weight or thin or whatever it is, that that will make me, everyone will feel better about me. I will feel better about me. And the reality is that's not true. It has to happen in the other way, or you have to feel good about yourself in order to be a healthy weight, and have that mean something to you. Because the reality is you can lose a lot of weight and still feel worse. You could feel uglier than you perceived. You know, it's a weird mental thing, and it's one of those things like, how do you teach that? How do you inspire someone to just accept themselves first and then do the things that they think that they need to do?
I mean, it's a lot of internal work. And I think that's what the practice of yoga offered me without me even realizing it. You know, I went back because of how I felt, not because it was this good workout, quote unquote. It was because I felt something that I had never experienced before. And, you know, it was, it was magic. It was, for me, it was magic and not anything that I ever expected when I stepped foot in that studio.
And that's why I think that there is definitely a parallel between someone like you doing this and someone who is an author or someone who's a musician. Like there's a lot of similarities in that. Um, so was there ever a time in that, like in the 10 or so years that you've been doing yoga, where you just thought, I don't want to do this anymore? Like, has there been like a point where you're like, I just want to quit? Have you ever had that negativity creep in?
No, somehow
That's
I
awesome.
have not. And I've heard people, I've heard people say like, I stepped away from doing yoga and, I think, I've definitely seen myself, like where my physical yoga practice has taken a backseat to some other types of movement. Cause I also really enjoy like a good sweaty, like HIIT workout. And there was a period of time where, I felt, I was doing Orange Theory a ton. And, looking at it now, I don't think it was very good for me. But, I felt like, oh, like this type of workout is my yoga, like I'm
Right. You're
in a
replacing it.
meditative state. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never walked away from the physical practice of yoga. And I feel confident in saying for 10 years, I've done a physical practice on average, probably 2 to 3 days a week.
I'm telling you, this current situation we find ourselves in with the pandemic is such a I have been trying to get back to a normal class for
Yeah.
this whole time. And when the studio that you work out of finally opened up their doors, I signed up for all the classes I could. And
Mm-hmm.
then I found myself in a situation where I was, exposed and had to get a test, and I had to cancel all of my appointments.
Mm-hmm.
And at that time, I turned out negative. So, it was fine. But then um, ever since then, I'm just like, I don't know. I tried doing an outdoor one, which worked well.
Mm-hmm.
But doing the virtual stuff for me, I found that I was missing. And for me personally, this is not.
Mm-hmm.
I just found that I the opportunity to give up was too easy.
It is. And I
It's too
think
easy for me.
it really is. I 100% agree. And, I think a couple things on that. One, I think this is such a fertile time to practice tapas, which is a niyama in yoga, which is self-discipline.
Mm-hmm.
And to like, that is the yoga, right? The self-discipline of sitting down on your mat and doing it even when it's hard or when you get distracted or you don't feel like it. And I think too, what's at least really helped me is, if I sign up and I pay for a class, I'm going to stay and I'm going to do it. It's like that monetary exchange for me is like, oh, like you paid to be here, you need to stay. And I found though, like when I practice on my own, just moving my body, that I last about 20 minutes. And I've learned to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I've learned to say, like, this is what I can handle on my own is 20 minutes, and that's enough.
Yeah, and it's. I mean, for me, the what you're saying, that the investment, and that's true, by the way, of art, of music, of anything.
Mm-hmm.
When you invest in something,
Mm-hmm.
you now have like an extra interest in it. You own a
Mm-hmm.
piece of it. You've bought stock in
Mm-hmm.
it. So yeah, there's definitely something to be said about making a financial investment in something, anything like yoga. Signing up for a race if you're a runner is a huge thing, because listen, the amount of money you spend is not that much, but it's something, and
It's something.
it puts a value on what you're doing, all the work you're putting into it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's
I think
go
I
ahead.
agree. I 100% agree. And I think I would be remiss not to take the moment to say, like, where in the West that we've seen this practice just explode and has become this like $1 billion industry is we forget that we can be in practice of yoga without ever doing an asana practice, without ever moving and making shapes with our bodies. And, you know, I just think it's important to drive that point home, especially, I think truthfully, especially here in Charleston, this yoga community is very different than what I came from in Ohio. And it's not bad. It's not good. It's just different. And it's important, I think, for people to remember that there's this 8-limbed path to this practice. And what we do is one part is this asana. And you can practice yoga by practicing self-discipline, practicing truth telling and nonviolence and meditation. And I think that's just, it seems as though the more and more yoga industry explodes and expands and gets bigger, that is forgotten. Like the roots of the practice are forgotten. The why behind we do an asana practice is not for great yoga ass. It's to set our bodies up to sit in meditation. And I think people don't know that. And I think it's important for people to learn those things.
So that brings, let's going to segue perfectly into the next thing. So you and another yoga teacher have started something called I Am Rituals.
Yes.
And it's a very, if I were to explain it from my end,
yes,
it seems like you two are trying to push a philosophy more than anything else. From the presence that you put out online and social media, you have a very different approach to happiness. You're like, the it's okay to say no approach, and the it's explain to me why did you decide to do this, and B, what's kind of like where you're going with it, like what you guys are trying to do.
Yeah. So Rituals was born, Allie and I, who I've been partnering with, took a trip to New York City last year, just as it was like a yoga meditation trip. And we both really wanted to try this type of movement. It's called The Class by Taryn Toomey. And we're both really into it. And Allie and I actually didn't really know each other very well. I led her in teacher training, and she was a part of one of my classes as assistant, but we didn't really spend a ton of time together. And it was totally organic and on a whim that we went on this trip. And I don't know how we did 10 yoga classes and meditation classes in 3 days or something crazy. I mean, and it was amazing. So, we did so many different types of movement. So the class is, the best way I can describe it is like this spiritual cathartic movement where they encourage screaming and yelling, and it's paired with repetitive movements. And then we did more hatha style yoga that was more slower, and there was a harmonium, and we did this hip hop yoga class, and we did a class that was all donation based in this old, looked like abandoned building. I didn't even know there were businesses in there, and meditation classes. And so it was a wide variety. So I came back from that trip just feeling super lit up and crazy inspired. And I kept telling Allie, I was like, I kind of want to curate this class, and I don't know what to call it yet. And so the short of that is I curated this class called Rituals. And it's really a combination of all the classes that we experienced together in New York City.
I took one of them, and I've taken yoga in New York, and I can see the correlation. The speed. There's a speed in life in New York that is unlike anywhere else in the United States, at least. And they capture it in the yoga classes, where there's a kind of a movement where you could be moving really fast and still feel like you're slowing down in your head, but your body's moving. Yeah, there's a different quality. But I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I 100% agree. That was exactly what I experienced. It was we went from this high intensity, The Class by Taryn Toomey, to this hatha style that was really challenging and a little more slower moving and more felt more traditional to this incredible meditation space that like the world was silent outside. Like it was incredible. So I talked about it for months, and Allie was just like, why don't you just fucking do it? And I was like, okay. And I did. And, I just had like in the pit of my belly after creating this signature class that I've really only taught a handful of times that I was like, oh, this could be something bigger, but I don't know what that is. I don't know what that means. And I just remember, sitting down with her and sharing with her my feelings and really consulting her. And, Allie has a background in marketing and PR, and I am not a marketing and PR person. I am an ideas person. I need help executing shit. It's like, let me tell you my idea, and I will contribute, and I need you to help me do it. And it just kind of developed organically. And so, we were sitting down talking about it, and we're like, what is I Am Rituals, and how, like, how are we going to be different? What are we actually trying to do? So we started with just like, we'll offer these pop-up ritual, the signature class that I created, and host a retreat was our first step. And we'll build a website so people can have a place to go to like sign up for the retreat. And, our plan was to pop up in yoga studios around town with the relationships that we've built. And
then 2020 happened.
And then the world, then the world just shit on us. So we had to pivot. And I think what was really important when we were kind of talking about what I Am Rituals was we're like, oh, we want to have a set of core values. And I take that from my time at Lululemon. That was something really big and really not anything that I put a shitload of effort into until working for Lululemon. And I felt that was really important for us to establish a set of core values for people who are visiting our website or wanting to learn about us, like what we stand for.
Which is probably why I am convinced that you guys are pushing a kind of a mindset or a philosophy above an actual product. Like
yeah.
the product of, a retreat or a class, and I call it a product because I don't know what else to call it. but that thing is a vehicle to materialize your core values. And
Yes.
and it's an interesting take. It's a very creative take on yoga. It's like let's create something based on values, which is kind of what yoga is, but you're remaking it for I don't want to say yourself because you're sharing it with everybody, but like in your own way. You guys are creating this thing, and it's very interesting to me.
Yeah, and I think it's just a way to have a presence out there to like that it's important to have a set of values, because really those values are helping shape your decision making and really all aspects. Like if you're working for a business that you're just not sure of, your core values can be that thing, that list you go through and say like, is this business or this person aligned with me? And I know my values. And it's like a gut check, if you're falling too far into one, you're out of balance with others. And I think the beauty in that is your core values, to me at least, are forever changing as you evolve and grow as a human. Your values are going to evolve and grow with you.
You would hope there's a lot of white people today changing and recognizing.
God, I hope so.
I mean, it's an extremely, it's easy to pick on people when they say some what in hindsight sounds like really stupid things, and you got to keep like reminding yourself, hey, I think a lot of us were there at one point, and if you could be the person that instead of insults them and scares them or pushes them further into a bad mindset and instead like gracefully hold their hand into recognizing that, hey, maybe you have been contributing to a systematic problem, and unwillingly. You were brought into it, and you did not get to choose that. You did not get to
Mm-hmm.
choose being born white. You also didn't choose your experience,
Mm-hmm.
and but you can choose now that someone's kind of given you the 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 doorway, and they're letting you look inside. Like I feel like black people and brown people are letting us into their world, and for us to like just shut the door or look the other way is extremely bad. And you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like we have this
I
opportunity, and people need to. I don't know.
I don't know that I don't I agree with that. I don't know that black and brown people are letting us into the world. I think white people are just starting to wake up because, black and brown people have been vocal and standing up and fighting the fight that we white people should have been fighting a very long time ago.
Oh yeah.
And I think it's just I think more white people are waking up, and I think as they're waking, it's their time to listen
Yeah.
and
I think
take direction.
when I say that they're letting us into our world, it's uh, there's a mindset. The This is kind of a very white mindset of, how come they won't assimilate? How come they won't be more like us? And it's like, why would they?
Mm.
Why would they want to? Why would anyone want to be like?
Mm-hmm.
Like, what have you done? What have you given them?
Mm-hmm.
Sitcoms? Like, what's so great? Like, like what's this white heritage that they should assimilate? How about we not assimilate, but we appreciate what they're showing us, and recognize them for who they are, instead of trying to make them like us. And I think that's what that's what I was trying to say, like,
Yeah.
opening the door to let us
Yeah.
in.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear you. I hear you. Yeah. My hope is that, I've shared with Allie that it's important, we have a platform, both of us and through I Am Rituals, to try and educate people and ask questions.
Yeah.
And I hope that people are looking at what we're putting out on our social media and are finding answers. And, I'm certainly no expert, but, I'm open to having the conversation and putting that stuff out there for people to learn. Cause I think it's important. And Allie and I personally am like, I can be boisterous, and I'm happy to put that out there. And I think Allie's just a little different, and she's like, oh, I want to do the quiet work, and I want to read books and have hard conversations, and I don't have to put it out on social media. And, which I 100% respect and see that point of view. And I just, as a collective, I think it's important for both of us to put those things out there and hopefully, represent, Black people on our page and highlight Black people. And, I think we can always do a better job at that. But it's something that has been top of mind. And all the time I'm asking, like, how is this inclusive to everybody? When we're making decisions or putting stuff out there, or trying to have that lens
Yeah.
when we're, on social media.
And it's a philosophy that you would hope would expand, like people would recognize expands not just Black people, not or gay people, or religious people, or whatever. It's like, hey, let's be open-minded to all people, and I'm not saying all lives matter. I'm saying, like, but
If you were Joe, we were going to have a real hard conversation right now.
but recognize that if we can take the time to recognize each other, and when one of us are down, pick each other up. And right now, like, hey, Black people have been down for a long time, and we need
For hundreds of years.
and we need to recognize that. And I'm not saying we need to be white knights and come in here and save the day. I'm saying we need to level the playing field, so it's so that that they are able to pick themselves up. Like we need to stop oppressing. We need to start recognizing
Mm-hmm.
what we're doing in our daily lives that might be contributing to keeping people down.
Correct. Yeah, I agree. I think it's we need to take a back seat. That's what I'm learning is like I'm taking the lead from Black leaders in our communities and trying my best to support businesses that are Black owned. And truth be told, I didn't always have that at the forefront of my mind, um, of like supporting Black owned businesses or signing petitions and stuff like that. And um, yeah, it's just interesting. I think the pandemic has forced people to pay attention and what's happening. Like people don't have a choice but to see what's happening. I think with all the other uh, things that's happened in the past, with police brutality and shootings and stuff like that, it was easier for people to go on to the next, and the news cycle changed, and there's not a lot going on. And I think people are being forced to pay attention.
And it might hopefully be a healthy thing for people to have the discussions, even the ones that are on social media that you're like rolling your eyes at, going like,
Mm-hmm.
how do you still think that? Like, what are you not? But we got to give people time and hope and be kind to them too. It's so easy to just to let the negativity of someone else's ignorance affect you, and it's going to be a very tough road to try to be kind to those people and to bring them in through example and through kindness.
Yeah.
It's
I
a
have a
tough
hard time
thing.
with that.
I know, because right now you're like, man, how it's how you just
Yeah.
yeah.
I have a hard time. I mean, I have a hard time with that kindness part of it. And I work hard on it. I work hard on, instead of being an asshole and, just going crazy on someone, to try and understand their point of view and then educate them the best that I possibly can. Cause there's so much that I don't know and that I'm still learning, but try hard to educate people when they make comments that I'm just like, not the same,
Yeah.
not the same.
uh,
Let me help explain why.
so all right, I'm gonna ask a couple of questions now. We kind of went off on
We
an
went down a
important.
rabbit hole.
Yeah, it's important though. I think it's very important,
Yeah.
and it definitely ties into I am rituals and yoga and who we are
Yeah.
as people.
Yeah.
Um, all right, so is there a class that you think, and these can be just rapid fire kind of questions, you don't have to go too
Okay.
far into it. Is there a class
Okay.
that you think that should be taught in grade school today?
Be more specific. Any kind of class?
Yeah, so like if
Or
you
like
were
or is this related to like yoga teaching classes?
no, I'm sorry, in grade school,
Any
like
kind of
in
class.
just regular school, like what is something that is not taught in school? Like when I was growing up, I think the common thing that people always complained about at my age was like, how come we didn't get a class on like finance and like how to
Oh
balance
yeah.
your checkbook? And
God, yeah.
like we never had that class, and I think
Yeah.
everyone goes through that stage of like, wait, you can have a negative balance. Like how does that happen? But
Yeah.
yeah, so right now, in you, like, what's your feeling of like, well, what should they be teaching kids in classes now that is a life skill that's just ignored?
I would say meditation and I would say meditation and teaching people, kids, that it's okay to feel your feelings because that's what they're there for.
Excellent. All right, do you have a book, movie, song, food, or some other work of art that should be required for people to consume in some way? Like right now, like what would be something you would tell, like you need to read this book or you need to listen to this song or see this movie?
Oh, okay, yeah. I'm rereading a book called Skill in Action, and it's written by Michelle Johnson, and she does a beautiful job of relating social injustice and how it all ties into yoga, um, and the yoga industry as like a teacher and a business owner. I think that's really important right now.
All right. And I know you talked about listening to some leaders in the community. Is there anyone you could recommend that to be on this podcast? Is there somebody that you
Yeah.
think like I want to hear this person talk about X?
Yeah, a few women come to mind. So, first person that came to mind is Tamika Gadsden is a activist here in Charleston. I found her a little while ago and have been um, following her on Instagram, and she's a loud voice in our community that I think everybody needs to hear. And she does a really, really beautiful job on educating people on Charleston's history.
She was actually quoted on Rachel Maddow's show like last night or 2 nights ago.
Yeah. I would say her. I would say Kanae she's the owner of Transformation Yoga. She's another person, a leader that I'm getting quiet and listening to, specifically in the yoga community. And she's also offering some really great workshops coming up for people in the yoga community, wellness community, called In Agreement. I'm really excited to take class with. And there's one other person, for some reason, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Drew McDaniels is her name. And she started a nonprofit. I'll have to look it up and get back to you on the name of it. But needless to say, I was introduced to Drew through my time at Lululemon, and she will kind of host these hard conversations for people, like almost like a potluck. You can invite her into your home, or this is what she's done in the past. And we invited her into Lululemon and started that a few years ago, hard conversation on social injustice and white supremacy. And she's very, very good at what she does and educating and sharing stories and talking about biases. So I think those three women in our community are doing some really cool shit.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So tell everybody where they can find you. Like, what's your social media, website, all that good jazz?
Yeah. So you can find me at I Am Rituals on Instagram, online, or my personal handle is Mandy B Yoga. If you go on our website, you'll see all the offerings. Our pop-up classes that are kind of happening. We're in the process of going towards a streaming service, a subscription-based streaming service is what we're in the process of working on. So people can get more yoga classes with rituals and virtual signature class. And our Sedona information is where our retreat is on our website. We're tracking closely the COVID stuff in Arizona. And we'll see if that'll happen in September or not.
Excellent. Well, thank you so much for doing this.
Thanks,
and being my
Joe.
Very first interview on this podcast.
I feel like such a famous person.
Well, I feel extremely honored that you said yes. And any time spent with Mandy, as if anyone's listening right now, will understand it's time well spent. So
thanks so much, Joe.
All right. Have a great one.
Thanks. You too. Bye.
Bye. So what'd you think? Head over to jwnpod.com. Let me know. Tune in next week, and we're going to talk to somebody else who's awesome. And if you have a suggestion of who you'd like to hear from, send me a message, jwnpod.com. Stay safe out there. Thank you.